So, welcome to our podcast. I believe this is episode 4 we're on now, and I'm pleased to be joined by my co-presenter Jonathan. And today we have Ryan Kerstein with us, who is, according to LinkedIn, shall I say officially, um, officially is the as a consultant plastic surgeon. But I mean, when I was looking through your profile, there's numerous things in there that kind of blew us away, and really what we talk about, associate medical director of research and innovation at Buckinghamshire Healthcare Trust, director of future surgery innovation hub, and it kind of goes on from there. And I'll let you kind of introduce yourself a bit more and kind of go through it. But your career overall, from what we can see, there's kind of surgery, innovation, leadership, entrepreneurship, academia. So what would you say has kind of sparked your interest in healthcare innovation, which is really what our podcast is about?
Yeah, great question. And the roles, you're absolutely right. I do seem to collect them, much to the dislike of my wife, whose one instruction whenever I go to a conference is, Ryan, please do not take another role as part of this conference. So my day job is I'm a consultant plastic surgeon and skin cancer lead for my trust, which is Buckinghamshire Healthcare NHS Trust. But I'm also an absolutely massive tech geek. And so where I get really excited is the world where that clinical work and the tech come together, and I can see how the technology will help me in being able to deliver the care I do, as opposed to it's really easy just to get excited by the tech, but it's about fitting those solutions in with the problems. And the third wheel of my various roles is to do with upskilling the next generation. And again, that comes from personal experience. So when I first started on this journey, so as you kind of hinted, that I've had my own company, my own startups, and my first was as a med student. And I was told very early on, don't talk about any of that. That's not surgery. If you want to be a surgeon, you do research, audit, teaching, and you learn to be a surgeon, and that's it. But there was this niggling part that I was like, no, but I want to include the tech and the entrepreneurship. And I had to keep it quiet. I was told, take it off your CV, and I referred to it as the dark side of my my training. And I don't want that to be the case for the next generation. So I'm absolutely passionate about finding that tribe of clinicians that are problem solvers and like tech, and say, look, actually, we now as the kind of senior medical workforce need to be supporting that next generation to think differently and do things differently. So that's how all those different roles fit together. Number one, clinical, and then the other bits kind of fit around it.
Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah.
What is it about plastic surgeons, Ryan? Because we had Jag Dander on last time, and I mean I called him a juggernaut, which he didn't take offence at, which is good. But what do you think it is? Because I don't see the same levels of creativity and innovation coming out of medics. It seems to be people who like tools.
So, well, firstly, small caveat, just so that way neither of us get a slap on the wrist from Jag. Jag is a max surgeon, but is absolutely right, is reconstructive, so they're pretty much the same tribe. If you look at people like Nadine Haram, who founded Proximy, or Jean Neem from Touch Surgery, and countless other people, I think plastics attract a certain type of person, and in fact, any of the reconstructive, which is why I kind of definitely count Jag in the same tribe, because by definition, the job we do, people come with a problem, and unlike some of the other specialties where there's a set solution, actually you need to problem solve. You need to work out how do you get from this problem to a solution, and the answer's not set. So I think the specialties attract problem solvers is probably number one. That's probably the kind of the official party line. I do wonder if there's a slightly unofficial party line that some of those specialties are the super competitive ones, and so there probably is a bit of a type A personality and kind of not taking no for an answer and driving forwards against adversity at each point, and then just that mindset kind of goes across. And then a third one, which is a bit of a pet project, a labour of love me, is dyslexia. I do think that, so I'm dyslexic, and I do wonder if there is a pull to surgery for dyslexics, and I wonder if there's a pull to problem solving, and it's well documented that some of the great innovators are dyslexic. So whether, again, that it's that same draws to problem solving, to surgery and using your hands and kind of the spatial orientation. So yeah, that's my kind of overall 3 different ways.
That's really interesting. The whole neurodiversity angle that's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole bit of research there for someone to do, I think.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Not me.
Not you.
No.
Okay, cool. One of the things we looked at, you mentioned as a student, you did, I think it was Tawny Strip, read, and it's kind of sold over 75 million units. How did you, how did you go from kind of creating something like that to making that into a commercial solution, especially when you're in your early days? How did that come about?
McDonald's. It was my flatmate and I, and we were in Schiphol Airport, and we were waiting for our flight, and we were talking about various things that we find difficult, and one of them being sent off to go and take blood or put cannulas in, and you'd really struggle at the time to find a tourniquet, which were the kind of cotton elastic version, or you'd find a rubber glove and you'd tie that around someone's arm. And we sat there chatting, going, "This can't be right." And we looked at the paper tray liner on McDonald's, as listeners will recognize. Well, I wonder if there's a better way of doing it. We just started cutting out shapes in using that piece of paper until we went, well, that, there could be something in that. So that was kind of the first part. And then I had this thing, ABCD, always be connecting dots. So the next bit was, okay, we think we can make a really different type of tourniquet, but what kind of material can we use? And we thought outside of healthcare and thought about the kind of club events we went to, or the festivals, wherever it was, and you get that kind of plasticized paper. And we thought, well, why don't we use that? Because it's cost effective, it's printable, it's shapeable, etc., etc. So we took our idea, we wrote our own patent, which has its own pros and cons. And then we went looking at festival bands and label manufacturers to see if there was somebody that would be interesting to over-keen med students with an idea. And we found someone, we mocked up a version of it, and then we went to Imperial Innovations, the kind of the tech transfer office for the college, saying, well, we've got this idea and we think could be really exciting. Would you be interested? And then at that point they came on board. By which point we had a kind of prototype, we had a business plan, we had a material. So they were like, yeah, sure. You guys seem to have done half the legwork already. So that was the start of the journey, and so many lessons learned along the way, which again try to impart when I mentor new startups, new companies, so they don't make the same errors that we do.
Yeah. I was going to ask, because I guess there was 2 parts. That one is obviously coming up with the idea and having that, but the other part is being supported by going to someone, and rather than saying, go away, we don't want a couple of kids coming up with an invention, we're not interested, right? Actually, we'll support you and we'll help you. And maybe, are you in that? Do you kind of do that now yourself?
100%. Yeah. I've got kind of 3 or 4 different companies at different stages that I help and support. I'm a mentor on the Clinical Entrepreneur Network. I set up the Royal College of Surgeons Innovation Hub, which half of its remit is exactly that, to support frontline innovators to take their ideas forward. And I have both, in Buckinghamshire we have a clinical innovation fellow who's an early stage trainee who spends 50% clinical and 50% on the innovation work for the trust. And as of less than a week ago, we've also launched the National Surgical Innovation Fellowship, which is a partnership between the Royal College of Surgeons and LIHE, which is the London Institute of Healthcare Engineering, for a national fellow, again, to teach them really early on the kind of how the clinical work and the innovation work go together, what are the regulations, and how do you kind of go across that journey. And basically along that journey, I've pulled in lots of tribe members to have a really good network of people that at various stages of the people that I mentor. I can go, actually, at this point, you need to talk to this person, or let's set up a meeting with so-and-so, because I think that'll be really useful to help you take that forward.
Cool, thank you. And just one last question about your background. I noticed, because my background is IT, right? And that's why I find this so fascinating, talking to people like people who haven't necessarily had that training through and through. But you spent a bit of time at BCG, right? Boston Consulting Group. How did that come about in between your medical training and?
So I took 2 years out. I was an ST6. So for those not aware, so that was towards the last 18 months, 2 years to 18 months of surgical training. And by that point, I had set up the BAPRAS Innovation Group, which was the first national surgical innovation group. And that was inside BAPRAS, which is the British Association of Plastic Surgeons. And I've been doing various other bits at the various trusts I've been working at, and obviously ASEP. And I'd said to my program director, who was super helpful, and I said to him, at the time, I'd really like to apply. There was a fellowship, there was a management consulting fellowship at the Royal College of Surgeons, and I applied and didn't even get shortlisted. So I said to my program director, could I just go and apply for a role at BCG to get experience from the people that do it day in, day out on big scales and internationally, to learn what I can in order to bring that back and continue this kind of innovation leadership journey. And Paul Cripty, who was the program director, was incredibly supportive. And he gave me initially a year, and then I slightly strung on him into a second year. But it was hugely, hugely valuable, and so much I picked up during those 2 years. I've been able to bring in, and that's everything from kind of morale, staff morale, so their work that they do around PTO, that kind of work-life balance stuff, to actually how do you present a story across PowerPoint to really kind of give a compelling message, or how do you put together Excel models, how do you project manage. So it was an absolutely fantastic 2 years, and hugely recommend it for those thinking about it.
When was this, Ryan? When did
2016 to 2018.
Okay. And who was it who sort of green lighted that?
The head of plastic surgery for Oxford and Thames Valley.
Well, that's quite pioneering thinking, isn't it?
It is. I was very, very fortunate that I had Paul as my program director to kind of allowed me that scope to go off and do that time.
So you've gone off. You've got the kind of external industry experience, I guess, and you've come back in. And I mean, would you call yourself an intrapreneur?
Yes.
Or yeah,
absolutely. That I've moved further and further. Like, there are constantly ideas coming in my head about kind of bits that I'd like to do and kind of companies I'd like to set up. But actually, where I'm getting the biggest buzz and just that enjoyment is how do I change the system on the inside to support a broader remit of people. So here, the innovation team at Bucks, that we're able to pull in these kind of new companies and support them, or the kind of work at the college, it's all to that goal of trying to change the system to allow that clinical innovation to flourish. And if you look at the Darcy report, it talks about like a key tenet is going from analog to digital. That's great, but unless you've got a workforce that gets it and a system that can adopt it, it's irrelevant what how it is.
So let's talk about that. But by the way, in terms of the ABCD joining the dots thing, I actually saw, you might not even be aware of this, I saw you do that firsthand. at the Brainwave conference in March at South Bucks, because there was a speaker talking, and they were talking about something, and the previous speaker, I think possibly one of your students, was doing something vaguely similar, and you pointed up at them and basically gestured, you need to talk to them.
Yeah.
And
it is something I really try to embody. And it be it people, be it kind of problems and solutions. It is. I think it's just how my brain works in that kind of. Oh, hang on, I can see the connection.
Yeah, amazing. So let's talk about talk more about South Bucks and the work that's going on there. So from the outside, you've created this. Well, tell me what you've created.
Yeah. So it is officially called BRAIN, which is Buckinghamshire Research and Innovation, the I and the N from innovation. And it encompasses research and innovation and population health. We are an unusual trust. There's a handful of trusts up and down the country that are a combination of secondary care and community services, which means we're really uniquely positioned to be able to both change the efficiency of secondary care, but by doing that, by changing some of the ways in which the community piece is put together. So that's the kind of overriding umbrella. When I took over the associate medical director role, the trust had already a really good research. So we had around 40 research nurses. We were one of the top district general hospitals in the country for step-up time and recruitment numbers, like really, really flying. And the innovation side was kind of there, but wasn't fully fledged as the research side. So a lot of my focus over the last 2 years is how do we bring the innovation side up to research? And part of that is actually what's the difference between research and innovation. So we've developed quite a clear strategy and framework for what's research, what's innovation. And then within the innovation space, we have a kind of a mindset that we start with yes. So if people come with something, the answer is yes. That's number one. Number two is once we say yes, then it's about actually, does this product, process, technology answer a Buckinghamshire problem? Because if the answer is no, then what we do is put it out to people outside to see if there's any interest, but essentially that's the end of the conversation from If the answer is yes, then we do what very few hospitals do. There are a handful, and I think I've got some great colleagues at different hospitals that do similar, but it's about we will act as that gateway to help bring in IT or the clinical teams or the engineering teams. Because if you're on the outside, you don't know who to talk to. And that's one of the big frictions of getting into hospitals is it's not clear who the stakeholders you need to engage in. Whereas we know internally who they are. So we can act as that agency to link people, and then we'll also project manage the path. And so we established that, and then the real kickstart for us was we took all our learning and the process we were developing, and we applied for the Insights program. So this is a national program which is the kind of counterfoil to the clinical entrepreneur network, because again, all these entrepreneurs creating things, but you haven't got a route into hospitals, then it doesn't go very far. So Professor Young, set up the Insights program to help support the other side of the equation, and we applied, and we're one of only 16 NHS organisations up and down the country who are given some money from NHS England to grow our capacity and capabilities for innovation. So we took that, we built the Brain Lab, which is a dedicated innovation space in the hospital. We set up, we took on an innovation project manager, and we developed a role of the clinical innovation fellow. And we're currently interviewing for our third cohort at the moment. So that's the kind of the overall premise. But what's amazing is I'm really lucky that the team we have are, again, that real go-getter driven guys, and it's not a one-man show, as it were, that it's a proper innovation team all pulling in the same direction. So really, really lucky. We have the annual Brainwave event. We have 125 delegates, speakers from industry and frontline. We have our Brainy magazine. which covers a lot of the work we're doing. Yeah, and lots more to come.
Wow. So in terms of the XR space, Ryan, because I know you know,
Yeah.
people are really interested in that. What kind of stuff is going on in this incubator that you've created?
Yeah, so the first and probably the thing that we're most proud of, and there's a big plug to your previous guest, that we were going to be the very first hospital to have a V-Rim hub. We may have been pipped by a certain East Grinstead who heard we were going to be the first and got in ahead of us. So I think Gagger's kindly said we're the first innovation hub with a V-Rims. But actually that on its own has been fantastic. And what's really great is it's all about collaboration. So the first thing we did once the kit was in was bring in our director of medical education and his education fellows and say, right, we've got this kit, we want it used, we want to support you. How do we work together? And we've been able to kind of work with them to put together an evening teaching program that they're leading on. And tomorrow we're inducting. We're bringing in the plastic surgery trainees and getting them involved. And so it's about kind of putting in as many people as possible to get hands on and actually using it. Otherwise, it's in a box. So that's fantastic. The other clinical thing we're working on is with a company called Poplar, where we're taking MRIs and CTs and converting them into 3D images to help kind of in that surgical planning, but from a kind of learning point of view. As opposed, we're not using it in theatre because that's not where our license sits with them, but in that kind of understanding the anatomy, preparing ourselves ahead of time for it. So that's really cool. What I'm really excited about, going back to what I was talking to you before about morale, we're just about to launch a VR for staff fitness, because no hospital's going to invest in gyms, or very few, certainly in the UK, but actually you would potentially invest in a £200 headset if you can put your staff members through kind of fitness programs and so on. So with the support of Ollie Brunswick over at King's, we are about to set up a trial, looking at staff fitness and morale using VR, and I'm really excited by that.
That's amazing. Yeah, we've actually got Oliver joining us at a future session, so we're going to we'll ask him all about that. I've got a couple more questions, if that's okay, from me.
Of course.
And this is a bit of a dry one, but you've got CEOs and CFOs all around the country who have got the impossible task at the moment of trying to save money.
Yeah.
When they knock on your door as an innovation team, what conversations are you having with those people when they're challenging you to say, you know, are you an essential service? Let's say, are you a potential place where we can save headcount? Yeah.
This is really topical. So we sit, we're part of the Insights group, and we're also recently invited to join the NHS Innovation Exchange, which is another group of hospital innovation teams. And this is repeated over and over again. How do we properly show our value? Now, there are some innovation teams that can tuck into things like charity funding, and so therefore they take the funding requirement outside of the hospital, and that's fine. For us, it's been a journey where, to begin with, the first few projects we got involved in were very much a kind of, there's a problem, this could be a really exciting solution, let's put it in and see what happens. And that's great, but with a lot of technologies, the answer is people will say that it's cool, we enjoyed using that, but we need to move on from that. So now our big kind of focus in any new project we set up is it has to have a kind of health economic or health impact aspect to it, so we can get to the other end of the trial and we can turn around and say, look, we can save this amount if we implement this, and it helps the company because they can go to the procurement teams with a strong argument, and it helps the executives say, oh well, I can see how that would help. So we've tried to position ourselves as the kind of pre-business as usual. But if you're fully fledged, you go to procurement, and that's fine. But there's a group of products and companies that hospitals need a bit of time to understand how it will actually work in their thing before committing to a procured contract. And I think that's where we add value, because we can control that project and try and get good metrics out the other end to then support the hospital the hospital work going forward.
Brilliant. That's really interesting. Okay. The other question I had, Ryan, was way off topic in terms of what we just talked about, and that is you're joining the dots. You can clearly see things that we can't see. So tell us what's going to happen with AI.
Yeah, I think AI is a phenomenal tool. It's a phenomenal tool that's going to change literally everything we do. And I think in some ways that makes it both exciting and slightly dangerous in a way that, and I don't mean it in a kind of Terminator way, but there are other technologies, let's say XR, AR, and so on, that their role in the world outside is limited. So not many people know about it, and you can kind of control how it's used. The problem with AI is the genie's out the bottle. We use it day in, day out. So it's almost a natural extension that we're going to be using it in healthcare. But certainly for the foreseeable, we will see more and more use cases where it is augmenting the work of clinicians. So there was that great paper that looked at mammography and could show that. So at the moment, mammograms, so these are breast scans looking for breast cancer, are dual read by 2 radiologists. The data shows that 1 radiologist and an AI is as effective as 2 radiologists. The quick answer would be, oh, we only need 500 radiologists. That's not true. The demand is not going anywhere. So what it actually means is you double your workload. Instead of having 2 looking at 1 scan, you've got 2 looking at 2 scans. The ambient voice technology, I think if you fast forward 5 years, definitely 10, there's no way that isn't bread and butter for what we do. The Americans have had scribes for years and years and years that support clinicians because they know it speeds the clinician up. The clinician doesn't need to be typing. You can have somebody else that's doing the typing while you're doing the talking. But where I think it'll get really exciting is once we can break into the integration with the EHRs, and not only does it listen and transcribe your clinical encounter with the patient, but it starts to look at ordering your tests, or at least give you the kind of, are these the tests, or I think these are what you need to be ordering. You just say yes, and then that's gone, and that ability to kind of pick up prompts along the way that maybe it's a patient that you are unaware, or not unaware of, but that you know that you need to see at 3 weeks' time, but nobody's booked them, or there's a test that needs scanned. You get these prompts say, oh, actually this test now needs booking. So that kind of live clinical assistant, I think it's going to be really, really exciting. If we switch gears and think about surgery, I do think that the technology is slowly creeping through in various ways of looking at cancer surgery and whether you manage to treat the cancer then and there. So things like the eye knife or the Zeiss wound bed scanner, that you take your tumor out and you scan the wound, and it tells you then or there. Well, at the moment, what it does is it sends it for a histopathologist to look through your bed to see if there's evidence of tumor. But ultimately, you can see a world where that's instant. That take the tumor off, scan it, and go, yep, we're clear, and you know that patient leaves with the best possible care. Or there's a fantastic Finnish company that can take scans of fractures, or CTs that have fractures in it, analyze the fracture patterns, and then using AI, it can then tell you what the best type of fixation is. And then what's really cool in connecting the dots is you then put that in a head-up display, and you can see whether you're putting your fixation in the right place then and there. So I think there's loads of bits where AI is going to come. I think at the moment, simple things that we shouldn't discount is the back office support. But actually, there's a lot less red tape and a lot more impact by making the back office stuff much more efficient. And then the clinical stuff is going to grow and grow and grow. But safely.
That's really, and it's interesting in this. There's a lot of fears around AI and people losing their jobs and things like that. But actually, in healthcare, especially in the NHS side of things, with the waiting lists and backlogs and things like that, actually it will help. There's so much to do that it will help reduce that without actually reducing the need for people. You still need you need more probably, right?
I agree. Yeah, it's going to increase capacity, and it's going to improve quality.
Yeah, absolutely. But my caveat to you is the medical students that are starting med school now in 2025 will finish their med school and start being a doctor in 2030, and will finish their training in 2040. The role of medicine and doctors between now and 2040, I think, is going to dramatically change. And the challenge we have as a kind of senior medical workforce and with our educational and industry partners is actually, what do we need to be teaching them now in order to make sure that we can make the best use of AI or whatever the technology is down the line, because I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, things are moving so fast as well that
Massively.
to keep up with it is but yeah, definitely something to think about. I think so. Just to maybe move on and as we move to the end, what's kind of next for you? What things have you got planned over the next coming months or years? Looking forward.
So yeah, number one with a bullet is this National Surgical Innovation Fellowship, which I'm kind of so excited about. The idea that we have gone from not talking about innovation to having a national program to kind of grow a kind of new breed of clinicians, I think is really, really exciting. I hope to kind of continue to grow what we're doing locally in terms of innovation capability. If you think about it, well, the way I think about innovation is two bits to it. There's the kind of frontline, how do we support those frontline innovators and frontline problem solvers, and the other one is about industry and how do we support industry in bringing good tech in. And I think we're doing a pretty good job at the latter, and we are not failing, but we're struggling with the former, in that most people are just trying to keep their head above the water in terms of their clinical job. So it's about how do we continue to grow that culture that supports clinicians, nurses, allied health professionals in being problem solvers. And I don't have an answer for that, but that's a massive focus for the kind of next part of the work that is on my mind.
Yeah, I think it's really been a theme, and I mentioned earlier, like from the McDonald's invention through to your going to BCG, there was always somebody there who opened the door for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's so important, and it's so good to see, that you're kind of giving back to that now as well. So yeah, real key thing there. Is there anything you'd like to see change at the moment, whether it's in the NHS level or in technology or anything that would help things a lot more?
So I think I would like to see more avenues for collaborating across clinical and industry, and there are bits of that happening, but because clinicians don't have all the answers by any stretch of imaginations, they're not technology experts, but in the same guys that the technologists are not clinical experts, so more ways of combining that. More emphasis at med school in terms of how do we grow this new generation. And certainly, I've been doing lots of work with the amazing Pro-Dean at the University of Buckingham, looking at new models in terms of integrating innovation technology, both undergrad and postgrad. And then the kind of plea, if there happen to be political leaders listening, is about how you fund this, because it's a difficult sell, as you kind of hinted at earlier, that they're not always obvious returns on investment as an having innovation services within hospitals, but unless you have them, you can't push it forward. A good example for Impact is that we were really fortunate to be one of only 6, I think it is, hospitals that were part of the National Skin Analytics trial. This is looking at AI in skin cancer detection. and we were able to cut our 2-week wait referrals by 25%. And we were absolutely inundated. And so unless we had an innovation service that could run that, there's no way we would have got that project, and there's no way that kind of evaluation would have gone further. And that's now been signed off by NICE as with approvals to use in clinical practice. So my big one is for those decision makers, do not underestimate the idea of investing at grassroots level in innovation, upskilling the workforce, and having the infrastructure to be able to support, evaluate, and either help implement or actually say no to innovation if it doesn't fit the need.
Great, and that's good. You also answered the other thing I normally ask around, advice for people and on that front. So I think we've covered pretty much everything we wanted to, and it's been amazing, really inspiring.
Yeah, it has.
So thanks very much for appearing on our podcast.
My pleasure.
We've got some more guests lined up. I think Jonathan alluded to a few people, and we'll post about them as well. And then this will go out at some point over the next few weeks when I get to editing it. But yeah, thanks very much for your time.